Hello and welcome to the Hotel News Now podcast. I'm Natalie Harms, a reporter for HNN, and today I'm joined by Mitch Patel, CEO and founder of Vision Hospitality, a hotel management and development company based in Tennessee. Mitch, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, Natalie, for having me.
To start, I wonder if you can help set the scene for me. We are a few months into the year. How's it going? Has business been going kind of according to plan for Vision?
Well, with this current administration, I don't know if anything is going per anyone's plans. It's been an interesting year so far. January was a little bit slow, then February picked up for us. This is our entire portfolio, where we have 42 hotels in 8 states. And then March with some spring break in terms of where Easter is and the holidays. It's been a little bit hit and miss. So there is no question that there's some uncertainty out there, right? And we saw quite a bit of that in 24. And of course, during the pandemic, we saw that in 20 and 21. And so whenever there's uncertainty, Natalie, I mean, there's always going to be some hesitation for investment opportunities, and it impacts consumer confidence, which, as we all know, our entire economy is driven by consumer spending, and consumer spending is driven by consumer confidence. So it has been impacted, and we have seen that. And so it's a wait and see game, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more clarity in the months ahead. But we are on interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely going to dive in a little deeper on the interesting times we're experiencing. But I wonder if just from like a business perspective, tell me a little bit about the current opportunities and challenges for hotel managers and developers. Kind of get into the specifics.
Sure, absolutely. So let's first talk about just operations. We saw this even before the pandemic, how revenues were growing, but expenses were growing at a greater rate, right? And then when the pandemic hit, it was an opportunity. It really was an opportunity for us to not fix, but to modify our business model. And it was an opportunity to really correct some things that were not going in the way we were seeing it go. And it can't be sustainable when expenses are outpacing revenues, right? And then now fast forward to where we are today, right? In 24 and then 25, what we clearly have seen is revenues have grown in many markets, not everywhere throughout the country, but revenues have grown at record revenue growth, record RevPAR in many, many markets. But again, cost of labor, cost of goods, you have real estate taxes, insurance, and then you compound that with debt, where with the current interest rate environment, it's a very difficult model out there, where expenses have outpaced revenues, and that cannot be sustainable. So that is a challenge that we all operators, all hotel owners are dealing with. And we're clearly seeing this bifurcation of the economy. The economy hotels have clearly been in a recession the last several years, and with the lower household income, they've had more challenges than the higher household income, and so it's but now with the what's going to happen with home values and what's going to happen with the general market volatility, we're going to see how that gets impacted. So all of those are challenges that we're dealing with. And then specifically more on the investment opportunities, every company creates value differently, Natalie, and our company is historically created through development, through new development. So we have, built over 60 hotels in the last 25, 26 years, and we have 12 hotels in our development pipeline right now. 5 of those will be opening this year. So, we're pretty active developers, and it is a very challenging environment for development. I don't know if I've ever seen it more challenging than it has been as of what it looks like today. Because construction costs have gone up considerably, and at a greater rate than RevPAR growth. And then we already talked about our operating model with expenses, and that doesn't help. And then on top of that, the current interest rate environment. So it is a very difficult time to be a developer. And so we are very good at it. That's what we have done for a long, long time. But it is very challenging out there to be a developer. And of course, as we know, the transaction market has been challenged as well, right? With what people feel like what their property is worth and what people are willing to pay for that property. And of course, the current interest rate environment and the fundamental business model that we keep on going back to impacts all of those decisions. And of course, we're going to go back to the uncertainty, right? So anytime that there's uncertainty in the market, there's going to be hesitation. There's going to be hesitation in consumer spending. There's going to be hesitation in corporate spending, which really drives our economy. And there's going to be also hesitation in deployment of capital into investing in the hotel space, right? When there's not clarity out there. So I think that a lot of people are on the sidelines and they're waiting and watching to see what happens next.
Yeah, I definitely think that is what my biggest takeaway was from the Hunter Hotel Investment Conference, which I know you were at, and I know you led the opening discussion. I had a conflict and I actually missed the beginning of your panel, and I'm bummed because I caught the end and I was really interested in some of what you said. A lot of the discussion in the conference was about these kind of current economic conditions, and you kind of likened this to a storm, which, storms come and go, but you advised, hotel executives to figure out if they have a brick house that can weather the storm or if they have a straw house that's not going to survive. So, what makes a brick house and what makes a straw house in this industry?
Yes, so absolutely. So for us, I can't necessarily speak for everyone else out there, but what does our brick house look like? I mean, we work on our brick house every single day, and we've been through some storms, Natalie. We've been through a storm in 2000 and 2001, a very bad storm in 2008, 9, 10, and then of course a storm that disproportionately impacted our industry in 20 and 21, right, during the pandemic. And so we've weathered through some of those storms. And so and these kind of analogies are always, I think, good to talk about, because I think people could understand these the environment that we are in, or we can potentially be, that we could potentially be going into a little bit better. So storms, do come and go, and we don't know when the next storm is going to come. We do know that this is a cyclical business, and storms have come and gone many, many times. So we could talk all day long, Natalie, about the economic conditions that are out there, and is a storm brewing, or when is a storm coming. But I tell my team we're going to focus on what we can control, right? And then your question about what makes that a brick house. So what makes a brick house for us is the brands that we partner with. Not all brands are equal. Let me make that very clear. The average Chick-fil-A does 9 million in revenue. The average Bojangles does 2 million or less. And so the cost of construction, the land cost, the equipment cost is about the same, right? If you build a Bojangles or if you build a Chick-fil-A. And so, but it's a night and day difference in performance. And especially in today's environment, there used to be, as a developer, I had a pretty broad room for error, you could say, right? And that has narrowed considerably. So there is not a lot of room to make mistakes and room for error today. And because of all those things that I just talked about earlier, it's a very difficult time to be a developer. So the brick house goes back to who you're partnering with the brands, and then the markets that you're in. Very important. Is it markets that are growing, population growth, employment growth, diverse demand generators, right? Very important. You don't want to be relying on just what a major government business. Look at what we're dealing with today, right? So so you have to have multiple demand generators and have the right mix of corporate, leisure, group, business, because we've also learned that relying on too much of one or the other. We have hotels. I used to love just being in these corporate markets, because it was easy to deal with a business traveler, right? They use the corner of the bed. There's nothing in the trash. One towel. They barely eat breakfast, and it was easy. And then with the leisure, it's the same person, but different mindset. When we're traveling with our family, and so in leisure, it could be a complete zoo sometimes at the hotel, right? And so we've had tremendous amount of leisure the last 4 years. And a lot of these corporate markets, these heavy corporate markets have been hit harder. And we've clearly seen that with a lot of our hotels. So having diverse demand generators is, I think, important. And then your basis. This business is about basis. What is your basis? What is your debt? What's your debt coverage ratio? How much liquidity do you have? And then most importantly, this is a service business that's layered on top of the real estate business. And that's how you can really differentiate yourself from others, right? We live in a transparent society. Anyone could Google a hotel, or even go on to Marriott.com or Hilton.com, and then there's this little rating system, right? That's right along the hotel. You could be a 4.7 in a Spring Hill suite, so you could be a 3.9 at a Ritz Carlton. And you're going to be making decisions based on those ratings and comments that people are making about their experiences at these hotels. So how you run your hotels, how you manage your hotels are more important than ever, is the point I want to make. That's how you can really differentiate yourself. And so your culture, this is a service business. So what kind of service culture? What kind of culture do you have in your organization? What kind of people? This is a people business, a people serving people business. What kind of people do you have in your company, your organization? So all of that make a brick house. And so we want a solid brick house, and one of the best brick houses in the industry, because it's very simple. When that storm comes, we don't want to be fixing things, patching things. We want to be looking for opportunities.
Yeah. And you mentioned, the leisure traveler. I wonder if you could speak to the evolution of that over the past few years. Like, what is the leisure market looking like these days? What sort of new trends and opportunities are you seeing?
Yes, definitely. So, Natalie, I mean, leisure has been a big percentage of the overall, travel pie, you could say. But that has just increased now, even to a greater percentage. So we saw, the leisure was growing before the pandemic, and then when the pandemic hit, and soon after that, it was pretty much all leisure, right? And then things are now settling in. What does that new normal look like? We're still not quite there, but clearly leisure has dissipated in many of the markets, like Florida, where they had this booming amount of business with the heavy leisure, has now, tapered a little bit. And some of those corporate markets have picked up a little bit, right? And so as business travel has come back, and group has obviously been strong too. So, so it's going to settle at some point. And I think when it does settle, we are going to see a higher percentage of leisure travelers with the overall travel pie compared to before the pandemic. Clearly, leisure is a big portion of our business. What are leisure travelers looking for? I mean, look, I don't think it's changed dramatically. I think most leisure travelers are looking for any just like any business traveler will be looking for, a group traveler might be looking for, is you still got to have friendly service and a clean room, the fundamentals of hospitality, and like I said before, we live in a transparent society, a more transparent society than ever. If you don't have clean rooms and you don't have friendly service, the consumer is going to know pretty quickly, right? That this hotel is not the place for them. So I think that the fundamentals of how you operate your hotel still applies. And then in terms of what else are leisure travelers looking for today? I think that they're looking for value more than ever, especially as consumer confidence starts eroding. We're seeing a little drop in consumer confidence, and people are going to be looking for value. I don't think that really ever goes away. And so value in terms of what are they getting for what are they paying in the rate, and then breakfast. I think free breakfast, complimentary hot breakfast is very important to this consumer. And not all consumers. We all know that there's leisure travelers that stay at full service hotels and pay $30 per person for a buffet. For a family of five, that's a lot of money, so there's a lot of value, that is in the select service space with a really good complimentary hot breakfast. I'm a big believer in the complimentary hot breakfast in the select service space. It costs us like $4 per occupied room, but the perceived value is $12 to $15 a person. A person. So you're a family of four, you might be spending $4, maybe $5 in a heavier leisure market per room, but the perceived value is $45 to $60 for that family, right? And that has been a huge part of the success of the select service space. Of course, the hotels that do it really well. And we've been able to get a premium in average rate at some of these select service hotels, many of them north of $200 on an average rate. And that's rivaling, as you know, full service hotels, and even sometimes in the luxury segment with select service executing it extremely well. So yeah, so those are some of the things. Space is important to them. They want to make sure that the whole experience is still it's a good one. I mean, and I want to touch on that just real quick. Those that treat hotels as a commodity, just a bed, a shower, I need shelter, and I'm on my way to the next stop. There are consumers that are just looking for that and nothing more. We get that. But more and more consumers are looking for an experience, even in the select service space, not just the boutique hotel space in an urban, destination type market. They are looking for a good experience, and sometimes even a unique experience, even in suburban markets where they might be traveling. And I think that we try to do that even in the select service space. We may have a Hampton Inn, but it's the most unique Hampton Inn that you may ever see, right? We will keep the core of what defines that brand, what is the ethos of that brand. We protect it. We get it. We don't want to disrupt that and that expectation that a consumer might have when they come to a Hampton Inn. But then everything else around it, why can't we tell a story? Why can't we put local art even at a Hampton Inn? why can't we at the breakfast introduce something that might be a little different and unique to the local area? And I think that when you do that, the consumer does pick that up, does appreciate it, and will pay a premium for that, and will have ultimately a better experience when they travel.
Yeah, it's such a great reminder, especially on the providing, a quality breakfast experience, because you can't exactly just like slap a bunch of cereal stations up and expect to get that perceived $12, $15 value per person, right?
That's
You
right.
gotta you gotta do it right.
That is correct.
Well, I know I introduced you at the top of the show with your role of Vision Hospitality, but you do have another role. You're the chair of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. So tell me a little bit about your role and your goals for this year and what it's like to represent your industry this way.
Absolutely, Natalie. I'm glad that you asked that question. You know, I was, I would say I'm relatively new still to AHLA. I became a board member maybe 6, 7 years ago, and I've got to know the team and the organization quite well and what they do for us, this industry, over those years. And so I'm just honored and humbled that I have this opportunity to be the chairman now of the board of this organization. And this is a very important organization for our industry. It's been around for a long, long time, Natalie. It's been around for over 100 years, 115 years, and I had to kind of research it a little bit. And when it first started, the organization, the mission was pretty simple, and it was just simply to protect and promote this amazing industry. And that has not changed, Natalie, in 115 years. Today, that mission is the same. It's simply to protect and promote this amazing industry of ours and the millions of livelihoods that people depend on with this industry. And I think that that is a very noble and honorable purpose, right? And I could go on and talk about the importance of HLA. But look, we have a very engaged board. We're in the middle of a 5-year strategic plan, and most importantly, we have a very talented team at HLA. I personally have got to know them over the years, and particularly this past year. And I'm just thrilled that I get to work alongside this talented team led by Rosanna Maeda, the new president and CEO of HLA. I think she's only in her job month 4 or 5. And so, but she's been a fantastic addition to the team, and we're thrilled that she came back to AHLA. So what are we doing at AHLA? We have challenges, Natalie. I mean, there's, as you've read about them, from New York to Los Angeles to other cities across this country, with onerous legislation that is unfairly targeting our industry. And this industry is an amazing industry, but I don't think a lot of people, a lot of legislators, and the average public knows a lot of what we do. There is still this misconception that the big brand companies own these hotels, right? And so I don't go around marketing it that Vision. This is a Hampton Inn by Hilton by Vision. We don't go do that, right? The consumer knows that it's a Hampton Inn by Hilton, and that's fine. But that's why that the overwhelming majority of people out there, consumers and even policymakers, they don't know that these hotels, overwhelming majority, are owned by people like me. You know, so we are an advocacy first organization, HLA, and HLA with advocacy, it's about storytelling, it's about education. And so it's our job to educate policymakers and legislators, right, about our industry. That economic impact that we make, right? The millions and tens of millions and even billions of dollars in investments that we're making in these local communities, right? The incredible ancillary impact that hotels create in these communities, the jobs, the millions of jobs that are created, right, by our industry. And I want to make it very clear that these aren't just jobs, they lead to meaningful careers. And that, again, is an amazing purpose that we have. And we have seen it time and time again. I'm an example of it. Thousands of examples, tens of thousands of examples out there where people started with housekeeping, from a bellman, a dishwasher, to be whatever you want to be in this industry, right? To be a CEO of a big brand company or a REIT, or an owner of a hotel company, so it's just amazing stories out there, and those stories have to be told and they have to be heard. And so that's what we're doing at AHLA, and we want to be much more proactive than reactive, right? We want to be able to go out there and build an incredible coalition. We're so fragmented, Natalie, as an industry. You have the brand companies, and you have the management companies, and you have the ownership companies, from people that own a single hotel to companies that own hundreds of hotels. But we are so fragmented. And I think that it's really important that we all work together and have a unified voice. And that's what AHLA brings to the table, is that unified voice that represents our industry at all levels, right? For all stakeholders. And I think that that is important. Tomorrow, I get to go to the hospitality show that's sponsored by HLA in Tennessee. I had the opportunity to go to Atlanta for the Georgia show. I'll be going tomorrow to Nashville for the Tennessee show. And I get an opportunity to interview a state senator and a state representative, and to talk about our industry and how important it is to the communities that where we do business in, and talk about the people. I think that if you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. Every legislator that I've ever talked to, they care about jobs and they care about people. And so we need to be talking about that. This is not just bricks and mortar. This is not just, okay, shareholders and value of stocks. You know, there's people like me that are living the American dream, right? That started their company with humble beginnings, with nothing, to where it is today, and partnering with 50 to 60 nonprofits a year, and very ingrained in the communities where we do business. Those stories need to be told. And we were, Natalie, I have to share this. About 12, 14 years ago, the Women's Fund of Chattanooga came to me and said, there's a major challenge in the hotel industry, and Mitch, we need to talk to you. And I said, what is this challenge? And they said, the human trafficking. And I was floored when they were telling me about the statistics and some data. I said, this can't be happening here. And I didn't mean like Chattanooga, Tennessee. I meant like in the United States, much less Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it was really eye-opening and heartbreaking. And at that time, my kids were a little bit younger, about the same age as a person that's being trafficked. And it really hit home. And I felt like, okay, let's do some homework. There was nothing out there. There was no training. Hardly anybody knew anything about this. And we're not talking about too long ago. We're talking about like 12 years ago. And so what do you do when there's nothing out there? You go create it. And so we were one of the first companies to create a training platform. We applied it to our own company. Then we were asked to go statewide. in the state of Tennessee. Then we were partnered with AHLA and AHOA to help create this, and then the brand companies got involved. And look at where we are today. By the way, the laws in the state of Tennessee, we were one of the worst states for laws against human trafficking. It was a misdemeanor to traffic a minor in the state of Tennessee, where it was a Class A felony to sell marijuana, where it's legal in many states. So we changed that law, and we changed other laws too. And these, because of all those efforts, Tennessee went from one of the worst states for laws against human trafficking to the number one state in the country for laws against human trafficking. So social responsibility, this industry gets it. This industry cares. This industry cares about their people. They care about their guests. They care about their communities. And we care. And I want legislators to know that, right? That we aren't just, what others may perceive to be these greedy developers, right? No, that's not what this business is about. And so that's our opportunity to do that. And the more we do that throughout this country, in every major state, in every major city, then we're gonna be stronger. And then when these challenges come that impact our industry and unfairly target our industry, then we're not just reacting. Now we have a really strong network throughout the country to help face these challenges.
Yeah, that's such a great point and such a great note to end on. So thank you so much for joining me, Mitch.
Well, thank you, Natalie, for having me.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Hotel News Now podcast. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to search Hotel News Now and find our news online every day at hotelnewsnow.com.
This episode of the Hotel News Now podcast network was recorded on March 26, 2025 by Natalie Harms and edited by Rachel Daub. Look for this and more at hotelnewsnow.com.